name is Paul McAllister, and I'm the publisher with Monster House Publishing, and my pen name for the Herman the Monster series is Paul McAllister. Monster House is, well, we're a couple things. So we're a children's publishing company, first and foremost. We publish exclusively Atlantic Canadian content. Our artists and authors reside here, and we focus on the stories from this place. We're also a mirror and window children's publishing company, so that means when you read the books, you see yourself and you also see others. So the idea of developing empathy and compassion and understanding between people is really, really important to us. When I was a kid, I really struggled to learn how to read. I was in grade 4 and pretty much functionally illiterate. Sherry Fitch, the author Sherry Fitch, came into our school, and she came in and told us she was from Fredericton and that we could all be authors if we wanted to, and that kind of sparked the idea for me. I then developed a love of reading, and it was kind of on my bucket list forever, and it wasn't until I was in my late 20s and traveling around Europe that I stayed at a place called Shakespeare & Company, which is a bookstore. It's an English-speaking bookstore right across from the Notre Dame, and the thing about staying in that bookstore is you can stay there for free as long as you're a published author. So I showed up at the bookstore and said I'd like to stay here, and they said, "Are you published?" And I said, "Not yet." And they were like, "All right, if you promise to be published, you can stay here." So I get to stay, and it's the same place that Jack Kerouac and William S. Burroughs and all of these kind of influential writers from the Beat generation and before all stayed there. So I felt like I owed it to the bookstore to publish a book. So when I came home, I set to work publishing a story. The first book that we did was There and Back Again, a Herman tale. And when I had this story, after I'd kind of come up with it and met with Goose Lane Editions here in Fredericton, which is Canada's oldest independent book publisher, which is super cool, and asked them if they'd publish my children's story, There and Back Again, a Herman tale. And they said, "We don't do kids books, but you love doing stuff, so why don't you just do it?" The first thing I did was reach out online and see if anybody knew anyone that could illustrate fun and campy but kind of creepy monsters. And a friend of mine tagged Emily Brown. Emily's from Chipman, and she currently lives in Toronto. I didn't know her at the time, and we connected and met up a few times, and her creative vision aligned exactly what I had imagined. So she came up with the design for Herman and the logo, and has illustrated the first 4 books, and she was a huge part of this style and direction that this company took. So I self-published the book. We did an Indiegogo campaign and managed to sell out the first 1,000 printing in just under a month. It seemed like there was a real need for it. And also at the time, I was the executive director at Feels Good Community Inc., which was an event, arts and music company, and we ran an annual festival called Folly Fest. And so I had a direct contact to all sorts of artists and authors and musicians, and they reached out to me and they're like, "I've always wanted to publish a kid's book. Could you help me do it?" And I was like, "Well, I guess so, yeah." I figured it out. And through the process of self-publishing, when I was going to register the ISBN for There and Back Again, a Herman tale, you had to have a publishing company. So I made one up on the spot called Herman's Monster House Publishing, without ever planning on having a publishing company. And one thing led to another, and now here we are 10 years in with 29 books under our belt. And I chose kids books because I have always loved picture books. I'm a children's entertainer by heart. I kind of got my acting start with the Calathumpians, which is kind of a well-established multi-generational acting troupe here in Fredericton, New Brunswick. Doing kids stories was kind of natural for me. I love the way kids books have illustrations that tell a story, words that tell a story, and then together they tell a whole separate story. And I think that's really, really special. And I think it's really important as a jumping off start for people to develop a love of literacy. Supporting local artists and authors is so important to me because it's near and dear to my heart. I have been in the arts for the last 20 plus years. When I was in high school, I wanted to be an actor. All I could think of was getting out of New Brunswick and getting to the big city so I could become successful. And that is a narrative that a lot of us have as artists. We think that there's no opportunities here, so we need to go to the places where there are opportunities. But what I found when I went to Toronto is I did have some success in acting. You know, I did get commercials, and I wound up working at Medieval Times as a squire and then a knight. What I found was I was a little fish in a big pond, right? So the getting into the arts there, while I was having some success, I still wasn't making anything of a ripple at all. And when I came home, I kind of came home with my tail between my legs. Like the commercial acting just wasn't for me, and I got quite injured working at Medieval Times, and came home to kind of catch a breather and then head back out. When I got back here, what I found was it was a small pond with very few fish in it, because all the fish were leaving, you know, to really, really get the most out of that metaphor. And I realized we had an opportunity here, that there were so many artists that were looking to leave, that we had the potential to convince those artists to stay. And that's why we work exclusively with Atlantic Canadian creators, is because we want artists and authors and creators to look at New Brunswick and look at Atlantic Canada as a place where you can create and you can grow and you can be successful in these industries. At the end of the day, we're creating, you know, and it's a really exciting place to be, I find. You feel like you're doing good, and you feel like you're putting some good into the world. In a lot of jobs, you just show up and you just kind of, you know, you do A plus B equals C all day, and there's not really a measurable impact. But with kids' books, it is so tied into the next generation and how they view the world and how they exist with other people, that you can feel the good that you're doing. And I think that's really, really fun.
What do you hope people take away from this documentary?
You know, Monster House, when I started it, it was really just promoting Herman and my books, and it has since grown into so much more. And I really hope that people can see that, you know, what we are doing is celebrating our creative talent and our stories that we have to share here in Atlantic Canada, with not just Atlantic Canada, but the rest of Canada and the world. And I hope that people can see what a rich culture of creative talent and stories that we have to share are here. And with this being our 10-year anniversary, I think it's a really good opportunity for us to really dive into that and celebrate it.
When the moon is full and big and bright, you know I'm gonna find me some. We'll be having fun. Cause history tonight for now. When the moon is full and big and bright, you're a monster out having fun. And we'll be having fun.